For all those people out there that want to talk about Joe Biden's health and he has Alzheimer's and he can't get through a speech, even people on Fox News said he did a great job last night. That's right. Republicans said, wow, Joe Biden did a great job. He stood up there for about 25 minutes. He showed conviction. He did talk about policy. You could name a list of, 15 to 20 things he talked about specifically about policy. Yes, he went after Donald Trump, but he talked about what America would look like if he was president. So I think you have to give, unless you're completely biased, you have to give Joe Biden credit for what he did last night. And as I mentioned again, those on Fox News were saying that he did a really good job in this speech. He doesn't have Alzheimer's. He's not sick. He proved it last night. He did a fantastic job, and I think that was important. So now, when you sum up the DNC altogether, and we'll play some of those audio bites coming up a little bit later on in the program, but when you sum up what the DNC was, it was what I thought it was going to be. You're going to go after Donald Trump. You're going to go after his character, which I think is fair game. And you're going to talk about Joe Biden's character. What will America look like if Joe Biden is president? Of course, Kamala Harris was a huge part of this, right? But there were a lot of emotional moments in the last several days. And I thought that was important because I think that hits home to a lot of people. In the end, is it going to change people's minds? I don't know. But I thought they had some great moments there. It was a bit predictable, just like I think the Republican National Convention is going to be predictable as well. Well, what do you mean, Brian, by that? Well, we know what they're going to do in the RNC. You're not going to talk about the love affair between Donald Trump and Melania Trump, right? Let's talk about the things that they're not going to talk about. You're not going to talk about how Donald Trump fell in love with Melania. You're not going to hear like they did with the Bidens and that love story. It's not going to be about Donald Trump's character, I'll tell you that. They're not going to talk about family very much, I'm sure. But I think they'll probably talk about defunding the police, even though Joe Biden is not for defunding the police. I would imagine in the RNC, they're probably going to be talking a lot about defunding the police. They're probably going to be talking a lot about faith. They're going to be talking a lot about gun control. The abortion might come up as well. It'll be the typical talking points, and I certainly don't doubt that. Just like in the DNC, they talked about how they got to put gun legislation in and red flag laws and stuff like that. So you're probably going to hear a lot about that, the RNC. But my issue right off the bat before the RNC even starts are some of the guests that are going to be speaking. I mean, I thought these conventions are about bringing people together. At least that's what you would think, right? I will give the DNC credit for that. I think they did bring people together. When you think about all the women that spoke, particularly the women of color, that's a nice message. That was a good message. Listen to a couple of the speakers that are already confirmed to be speaking. I don't think Diamond and Silk or Scott Baio are confirmed yet. But Nicholas Sandmann, if you don't know who Nicholas Sandmann is, he was the kid who, basically was wearing the Donald Trump hat with his students behind him. And I don't want to go into that story again, but, filed a lawsuit against the media and all that other stuff. This is a very divisive situation, Nicholas Sandmann situation. And the McCloskeys, the couple who aimed their AR-15 and guns at Black Lives Matter protesters, they're going to be speaking. You want to talk about divisive? I didn't think what we saw at the DNC was necessarily divisive. Sure, they went after Donald Trump. Sure, they went after his character. But I believe these two guests that are going to be...
Brian, they painted the entire... not the entire country, but they painted a lot of the country as racist, Brian.
No, they didn't.
They painted a picture of a very, very dark and grim America.
Okay, no, they didn't.
A very oppressed America.
No, they didn't.
An America where there's not a lot of hope. Yeah, they did, Brian. They definitely
did. You watch last night?
No, I'm saying over the course of the DNC.
Okay,
I thought Biden did a pretty good job last night. Yeah, I was very surprised.
I wasn't.
With that's fine. That doesn't mean that I can't be. But I was very surprised with how eloquent he was. Now, granted, he was looking at a teleprompter.
So what?
He hasn't done anything like that in 2 months. He hasn't taken any questions from reporters since July 28th. So he obviously we'll see if he can actually handle the rigors of debates and the rigors of actually having to sit down and have a press conference where reporters are asking you questions and not questions that you know the answer to. So we'll see how that goes. But I did think that Joe Biden did a very good job. His delivery was significantly better than I expected it to be. Mm-hmm. And Fox News is correct. And now, granted, as far as the policy goes, the policy that he brought up yesterday would cost probably 3 times what we've spent total on the pandemic so far with stimulus packages. It would cost probably $15 trillion. $1.3 trillion is not the right number. The number that he used, which would, we talked about cutting the tax to the ultra wealthy by 1%, taking that off. If that took place, it would unemploy a lot of people, first of all. So who would employ those? It'd probably be the government. But it would cost significantly more than $1.3 trillion.
Well, my response to that is if Republicans are concerned about money, if you recall, for 8 years they were talking about the deficit and what Barack Obama was doing to the country. Take a look at where we are now as where we were when Donald Trump took over. And the response to that is, well, Donald Trump has put us in a lot of debt. But you don't hear Republicans and conservatives talking about that. It's only what Obama put us in. Look at what Donald Trump has put us in.
How much of that is attributed to the pandemic, though, Brian?
Not much. When you look at what happened before the pandemic, he put us in a huge deficit before the pandemic started. So anybody out there, I'm speaking to you, Republicans and Donald Trump supporters, you have no ground to stand on. If you're going to put all blame on Barack Obama and look at the deficit he put us in. Hold on. All the deficit Barack Obama put us in before this pandemic, take a look at the deficit that Donald Trump put us in.
I'm not even talking about Barack Obama. I'm talking about George W. Bush. George W. Bush, the war in Afghanistan has cost us $7 trillion so far.
You mean the war in Iraq?
Both Afghanistan and Iraq, both, yeah. That's cost us $7 trillion so far.
The war in Afghanistan has not cost us that much money.
Collectively, the two together have cost us $7 trillion.
Okay, well, that has nothing to do with Barack Obama.
That's what I said. I said George W. Bush, Brian.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what are you getting defensive for?
No, I'm not getting defensive.
Don't get defensive. Don't get defensive. George W. Bush is the one.
I'm not getting defensive
and
at all.
Dick Cheney, Republicans were the one that started that war, and the goal was to get democracy in those two places, which is never going to take place. So that's just been literally a wash. And Donald Trump is trying to remove us from Afghanistan and remove us from Germany, and he's actually done a pretty good job of not putting us bringing us to war.
Okay. Well, number one, I'm not getting defensive at all. I don't know why you would say that.
Oh, you did. You got defensive when I said that it wasn't
okay,
Obama.
Well,
said
now
it was
I'm getting
Bush.
defensive because you're not letting me respond. First of all, I'm talking about the DNC. I'm not talking about the war in Iraq. I'm not talking about what took place during the Bush administration. I'm talking about the DNC, good parts of the DNC, Joe Biden's speech, and I'm talking about what we should expect from the RNC. I'm not really interested in what George W. Bush did. And the only reason why I brought up Barack Obama, because we're talking about Donald Trump and we're talking about the deficit. And I believe, I know, for 8 years straight, we heard from Republicans talking about, he's putting us in this deficit and yada, yada, yada. You don't hear that now because Donald Trump has put us in a huge deficit. That's the only point I was trying to make. We don't have to go back to wars and the war in Iraq and all that other stuff. But listen, I expect the same from the RNC as far as, defunding the police and talk about faith and talk about guns, so on and so forth. I just think when you have the McCloskey speak and you have Nicholas Sandmann speak, it's a little bit divisive. But